brought to you by Charity Mobile, the phone company that shares your values. More information is available at CharityMobile.com.
Hey folks, it's Anthony, and yes, my voice is still on the fritz, like I said yesterday. If you didn't catch yesterday, well, my voice is on the fritz. I got whatever it is that everyone seems to be dealing with right now, and I'll be fine. Prayers are appreciated, though. Anyway, on to today's story. I had been waiting for Bishop Athanasius to chime in on the responses ad dubia. He was the only one of the better bishops that, to my knowledge, hadn't released a formal public statement of some kind yet. And while many of the others had been, frankly, either disappointing or completely out of touch with reality, the auxiliary bishop from Kazakhstan's statement is a bit different. No, it's not a Vigano-esque retort denouncing the Bergoglian hierarchy for their monstrous attacks against tradition. Instead, Bishop Athanasius is using Francis's own words against him in what many are taking at face value to be an appeal to his soft-heartedness, but is instead something more. But I also want to mention that another bishop just issued a blunt letter, but it's way too much for YouTube, so it's on the audio-only side of things today. And if you want to hear it, I have it for you in the pinned comment below. Or you can just check out Spotify or any of the other audio-only platforms this show's found on. It'll be combined with this one for those who follow my work using the Apple Podcasts and that kind of thing. But enough of all that. Let's dive into the story. This has been a busy week for the church, as they usually are lately. Between Francis continuing to endorse things that his predecessors had condemned and cleaning house in the Roman Curia, we have been treated to a flurry of activity out of Rome. Enter into this statement from Bishop Athanasius, and I have it here for you in full, since it is really pretty short. The good bishop here is on the surface appealing to Francis to rescind Traditionis Custodes and all associated documents. In a more complicated way, he's using Francis's words against him, at least that's my reading of it. For those listening, Bishop Athanasius is saying neither submit nor resist. He is appealing to Francis directly, quoting him and his philosophy of charity and mercy, and in so doing he's pointing out Francis's stark hypocrisy in all of this. I'll let the bishop speak for himself. If you want to read the full text, I have it linked in today's show notes at returntotradition.org. That's the name of this podcast with the .org at the end. Skip past the Patreon pop-up, since there really is no paywall for my sources. Now, on to the letter of the auxiliary bishop from Kazakhstan. Bishop Athanasius calls on Pope Francis to rescind Traditionis Custodes, a.k.a. the duty of the Roman pontiff to restore liturgical peace, a pastoral reflection, again by Bishop Athanasius of Kazakhstan. As we advance along the synodal path leading to the 2023 Synod on Synodality, a wound has been opened in Christ's mystical body, the Church. We are referring, of course, to the spiritual pain and injustice that has been inflicted on a considerable number of good Catholics of all ages, both laity and clergy, through the publication of Pope Francis's Traditionis Custodes on July 16, 2021, and the responsa ad dubia of the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments on December 4, 2021. The overwhelming majority of lay faithful and clergy attached to the traditional Roman rite keep far away from ecclesial and liturgical polemics, and they have respect and pray for the Pope and for their bishops. They only ask for the right to be able to continue to live fully both regarding the celebration of the Holy Mass and the celebration of all the other sacraments and rituals, the liturgical patrimony in which they and generations of young Catholics have grown up. Indeed, the Apostolic See, with a generous pastoral gesture, had guaranteed them this right during the pontificates of Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI. This spiritual wound and its painful consequences, both pastorally and personally, for many thousands of Catholics are publicly known. And the Roman Rite's precious and entire ancient liturgical patrimony, which is a common spiritual good of the entire Church that must not be lost, is under threat. Bishops therefore have the duty to express publicly and frankly their deep concerns, in keeping with the manner being encouraged on the current synodal path. In his address for the opening of the synodal path on October 9, 2021, Pope Francis said, "If we do not become this church of closeness with attitudes of compassion and tender love, we will not be the Lord's church." May Pope Francis realize that he has been ill-advised, and may he demonstrate pastoral courage, humility, and true love for these marginalized sons and daughters of the Church, by rescinding the canonical provisions stipulated in the two aforementioned documents. In so doing, he will most certainly be bandaging wounds and healing broken hearts with the balm of God. Within this context, we do well to recall a great saint who went down in church history as a true peacemaker, St. Irenaeus of Lyons. At a critical moment in the Church's history, when at the end of the 2nd century, the Apostolic See wished to impose a unique expression of the Lex Orandi regarding the date to celebrate Easter on a group of clergy and faithful, thus rejecting other legitimate liturgical traditions, St. Irenaeus intervened and respectfully remonstrated with Pope Victor I, reminding him of the pastoral magnanimity and moderation of his predecessors, especially that of Pope Athanasius, who, despite having a liturgical perspective different from St. Polycarp, a disciple of the Apostle John, nevertheless allowed another liturgical tradition to continue undisturbed. Pope Victor I seems to have listened to the fraternal appeal of St. Irenaeus. Pope Francis recently announced the joyful news that he plans to proclaim St. Irenaeus a Doctor of the Church with the significant title Doctor Unitatis. Recalling the example of St. Irenaeus, the peacemaker and future Doctor Unitatis, as well as that of his predecessors John Paul II and Benedict XVI, Pope Francis should listen to the voice of the many children, young people, fathers and mothers, seminarians and priests attached to the Church's ancient rites and guarantee their established right to worship according to all the liturgical books of the Roman Rite that were in use until the recent liturgical reform. In this way, these marginalized sons and daughters of the Church will feel that they are part of the life of the community without being hindered, rejected, or judged. See Homily of Pope Francis at the Holy Mass for the opening of the Synodal Path, October 10, 2021. Pope Francis has called everyone in the Church to be sensitive to the questions of our sisters and brothers, to let ourselves be enriched by the variety of charisms. See the Homily at the Holy Mass for the opening of the Synodal Path. May God grant Pope Francis the grace to truly be a pope of liturgical peace, promoting whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely. See the letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, verse 8. Were Pope Francis to act with such charity and pastoral humility, nothing would be lost, and everything would be gained. And the God of peace would be with him and with all the faithful. See the letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, verse 8. Signed, Bishop Athanasius, Auxiliary Bishop of the Archdiocese of St. Mary in Ostania. I'm not sure what to make of that. Bishop Athanasius is my favorite bishop in the Church, and if he became Supreme Pontiff by some act of God, I would dance in the streets singing the Te Deum. I don't doubt that he has the faith. But, and let's be honest, if I'm wrong about him using Francis' own words to paint him as a hypocrite, then I really don't know what to think about this. Francis the Vengeful is not going to be swayed by appeals to kindness and mercy. Mercy is only for those that the Vatican deems worthy of it, and when we're talking about modernist Rome here, then mercy only applies to those that the allies of Francis have, in the beast, have deemed acceptable and worthy of mercy. That's not those of us who rigidly cling to all the Church, and by extension, of course, Christ, taught us in the name of Christ. Divisions certainly exist in the Church. There can be no mistake about that. Just go look at some mainline Catholic Facebook groups or whatever and point out things going on and see the pushback you get from even people who are not hyper-modernists. A lot of people think we are meanie doo-doo-headed trads, as Francis has been painting us. But these divisions have been present for decades. This is nothing new. For the longest time, traditional Catholics were on the margins, and we were barely listened to. Phil Lawler goes over this in a recent piece on his website, and he says that over the years, the trads started making more and more sense, especially because of Francis and the thing Francis said. Then he gives us this, which I think is important to remember when appealing to Francis's charitable side, as many are still want to do for some reason. I don't understand it, but these words of Phil Lawler here are actually something to bear in mind. Quote, "So we asked these questions, which our traditionalist friends had been asking for years already. The answers drove us still further toward the trads. We could not ignore that. Whatever our past differences, the trads held the same fundamental beliefs that we cherished, the same beliefs that were now everywhere under attack. We could not ignore that traditionalist communities were growing at a time when parishes were shrinking and dioceses were quote-unquote restructuring by closing the doors of vacated churches. Above all, we could not ignore that the traditional Latin Mass was celebrated with reverence and conveyed the rich heritage of our faith. Within the past week, I have spoken with a half-dozen other Catholics who, like me, have begun regularly attending the traditional Latin Mass. In every case, their movement towards the TLM began during the current pontificate. We did not move toward traditionalism because the trads attacked the Pope. It would be far more accurate to say that we moved in that direction because the Pope attacked us. If the Vatican is looking for an explanation of the heightened divisions within the Church, and particularly for the latest escalation of the liturgy wars, the search should begin, alas, on Peter's throne. And the divisions will not be healed by the Vatican's undeclared war on traditionalism." End quote. That war has since been declared. Traditionis Custodes was a formal declaration of war on all things identifiably Catholic. We know this through the closing of so-called reverent Novus Ordo Masses by bishops who cited Traditionis Custodes. I've reported on that a few times. And the accompanying letter, of course, is the reason for doing all that. Liturgical errors of all kinds are the norm now, and we have been told that there is a rupture from the highest places in the Church. By admitting that Francis admits that he and his work are entirely illegitimate, and it's helping make people realize that Vatican II is the same. Francis is doing our work for us. And what did you think about the letter, and about the point Mr. Lawler makes in his article? Let me know in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't, it really does help, and of course, prayers for me, please, for my voice. As always, pray for the Church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.